What if I told you that America's largest retailer has become the backdrop for some of the most disturbing incidents you've never heard about? Tonight, we're starting with the first spine-chilling encounters inside Walmart stores across the country. This story takes place in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where a security guard discovered something so bizarre, so unsettling, that it changed the way he looked at his job forever. Before we begin this descent into retail horror, make sure you smash that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and settle in, because this one is going to stay with you long after the lights go out. I've worked the overnight security shift at the Walmart Supercenter on Airline Highway in Baton Rouge for over 2 years. If you've never stepped into a massive 24-hour store after midnight, let me paint you a picture. The aisles stretch on like tunnels. The shelves cast long shadows that seem to move when you're not looking. The hum of the fluorescent lights is so constant, so loud, that you start to wonder if it's buzzing inside your own head. And your footsteps echo like you're not alone. Most nights are boring. I make my rounds, check the exits, make sure no one's hiding in the bathrooms, and stop shoplifters who think self-checkout doesn't have cameras. Sure, I'd run into the occasional drunk who wandered in at 3 a.m., or a homeless person who thought the garden center would make a decent shelter. But nothing in 2 years of graveyard shifts could have prepared me for what I found on March 15th, 2019. That night made me question everything I thought I knew about this job and about Walmart itself. It was 2:47 in the morning. I was doing a standard perimeter check when I noticed something strange in the bedding section. At first glance, it just looked messy. Comforters yanked from shelves, pillows scattered across the linoleum floor. But as I got closer, I realized this wasn't just a mess someone had made. A nest. Behind a display of discounted winter blankets, there was a kind of fort, piled high with pillows, layered with sheets and comforters. Like someone had tried to build themselves a little home inside the store. I muttered to myself, damn kids. Maybe some teens had been goofing off and security missed them earlier. But then I froze, because from inside that fort, I heard breathing, slow, rhythmic, too heavy to be a child. I reached for my radio to call the overnight manager, Sarah, but before I could speak, a voice came from inside the blankets. Calm, conversational. I was wondering when someone would finally find me. A man crawled out. He looked mid-40s, graying hair, sunken eyes. And here's the part that made my stomach drop. He was wearing multiple layers of clothing, each piece with the Walmart price tags still dangling from them. He smiled, not nervously, not like someone caught red-handed. No, like this was perfectly normal. My name's David, he said. Don't worry. I'm not hiding. I'm living here. I stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or to reach for my taser. But the more he spoke, the more wrong it felt. He explained, calmly, that he'd been living inside the store for 3 days. Not hiding, living. He described his routine in unsettling detail. He knew which aisles were safe to sleep in. He knew which security cameras had blind spots. He knew the cleaning crew's exact schedule. And he said it all with a kind of pride, like he'd been studying us. I told him to stay where he was and radioed Sarah. My voice shook, but I tried to keep it steady. While we waited for backup, David offered to show me around his little home. And I'll admit, curiosity got the better of me. He pulled back the blankets to reveal snacks he'd opened carefully so they looked like damaged goods. He had a phone charger plugged into a display model in electronics. He had a whole system worked out, and he talked about it with the detachment of a scientist. Like this wasn't his survival. It was an experiment. I even started to feel sorry for him. He'd lost his job, lost his apartment, and instead of asking for help, he wanted to see if he could disappear into the belly of the beast, the endless aisles of Walmart. After 20 minutes, Sarah and 2 Baton Rouge officers arrived. David didn't resist. He didn't run. He just stood, calm as ever, and smiled as they led him away. For a moment, I actually felt relief, like it was over. But it wasn't. The next day, management called me into the office. They had reviewed the security tapes, and they wanted me to see them. At first, it was what I expected. David wandering through the store like any other customer, picking up items, browsing shelves. But the longer I watched, the more I realized something wasn't right. Because he wasn't shopping. He was watching. In the footage, he trailed behind mothers with children. He loitered just within earshot of employee conversations. He stared at cashiers long after his shopping was done, silently mouthing their names. And then came the part that still keeps me up at night. On March 14th, the night before I found him, the cameras showed David standing completely still in the toy aisle, not moving, not shopping, not even blinking, for over an hour, just standing there. And when the zoom caught his face, he was smiling. David was charged with trespassing. The theft charges didn't stick. He hadn't stolen anything, at least not in the way the law could prove. He told the officers he kept a mental log of everything he touched, everything he ate, everything he used. And that one day, when his experiment was done, he'd pay it all back. But there was something else, something that sent a chill down my spine. When they asked him why, he kept repeating the same phrase. This was only a test. Next time, I'll do it better. At first, I brushed it off as rambling. But a few weeks later, one of the officers pulled me aside. They told me David wasn't the first. Across the country, there had been other cases. People found living undetected in Walmart stores, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks. And in every case, they found notebooks, journals filled with store layouts, employee schedules, and most disturbing of all, lists of customers, names, descriptions, habits. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about studying. So now, every time I walk those empty aisles at night, I can't help but wonder, was David really just a desperate man with nowhere else to go? Or was he practicing, perfecting something he hadn't yet revealed? And the next time I pass by a customer who seems a little too comfortable in the aisles, I find myself thinking, maybe they're not shopping. Maybe they're living here. Maybe they're watching me. That was story 1 of 11 disturbing Walmart horror stories. If this gave you chills, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, because the next story is even darker. Now, let's move to Phoenix, Arizona, 2020. The second story in our series takes us to Phoenix, Arizona. Imagine walking into your local Walmart late at night and realizing someone is following you. Not just following you, but copying you. Every move, every turn, every hesitation. And no matter how fast you try to escape, they're always right there. This is the story of Emily Parker, a 28-year-old woman who just wanted to pick up a few groceries. Instead, she found herself face-to-face with a stalker who defied explanation. It was August 12, 2020. Emily had just gotten off work at a call center. It was late, almost midnight, but she decided to stop at Walmart before heading home. The store was quiet, almost empty, just a few scattered shoppers, most of them keeping to themselves. She grabbed a cart and started down the frozen food aisle. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the wheels of her cart squeaked with every push. She told herself she'd be quick: milk, bread, some vegetables, maybe a frozen pizza. Then home, shower, bed. But as she turned into the produce section, she felt it. That prickling sensation at the back of her neck, like someone was watching. At first, she didn't see anyone, just neat rows of apples and oranges. But when she reached for a bag of lettuce, her eyes flicked to the end of the aisle. And that's when she saw him. A man, tall, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood pulled low over his face. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there. Emily looked away quickly, trying to convince herself it was nothing. Just some guy waiting for his wife, maybe. But when she pushed her cart into the next aisle, there he was again. Same spot, same stance. Watching, Emily sped up. She cut through the cereal aisle, then turned sharply into home goods. And when she turned, she froze, because the man was there again. And this time, he wasn't just watching. He was copying her. When she grabbed a box of cereal, he picked one up too. When she set it down, he set his down. When she adjusted her hair nervously, he mimicked the exact same gesture. It was like she was looking into a distorted mirror. Emily's heart raced. She abandoned her cart and walked quickly toward the front of the store. She told herself she was being paranoid, that maybe it was just coincidence. But then she heard it. Footsteps, perfectly in sync with her own. She reached the registers and finally saw another human being, the self-checkout attendant. Relief flooded her. She forced a laugh and told the woman at the register that she thought someone was following her. The attendant glanced down the aisle. No one was there. Emily turned too, and the hooded figure was gone. She felt ridiculous, like she'd just embarrassed herself. Maybe it had been a trick of the light. Maybe her nerves were just frayed after a long day at work. She thanked the attendant, grabbed a basket of essentials, and headed for the exit. By the time she stepped into the humid Arizona night, she had almost convinced herself it was over. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a handful of cars scattered under the yellow glow of the lamps. Emily walked quickly toward her sedan, fumbling with her keys. That's when she heard it. A car door closing. She looked up. Across the lot, under a flickering lamp, stood the hooded man. Not walking, not running, just standing there, watching. Her chest tightened. She unlocked her car, jumped inside, and slammed the doors shut. Her hands shook as she shoved the key into the ignition. But before she could turn it, she looked up and nearly screamed, because the man was no longer across the lot. He was standing directly in front of her car. Emily's survival instincts kicked in. She threw the car into reverse, swerved around him, and sped toward the exit. She didn't care if she hit a curb. She didn't care if she scraped her bumper. She just needed to get away. In her rearview mirror, she saw him, still standing there, still watching. She made it home in under 10 minutes. She locked every door, shut every blind, and sat on her couch, trembling. By 3 a.m., she finally convinced herself it was over. Whoever he was, he hadn't followed her. She was safe. The next morning, Emily dragged herself out of bed. She hadn't slept much, but she had to go to work. She walked into her kitchen, poured herself some coffee, and reached for her phone. That's when she noticed something strange. Her phone screen was cracked, but not just cracked, smeared, like someone had dragged a finger across the glass. Her stomach dropped. She always left her phone charging on the nightstand beside her bed, and that's when the realization hit her. If the hooded man never followed her home, then how did her phone get touched? That was story 2 of 11. Disturbing Walmart horror stories. The Mirror Shopper. If you think being followed in a store is unsettling, wait until you hear what happened during the pandemic in Portland, Oregon, because our next story is about one of the strangest and most chilling thefts in Walmart history. Stay tuned. The third story in our series takes us back to the spring of 2020, a time when the world was in chaos, when supermarket shelves were stripped bare, and when toilet paper became more valuable than gold. Most people were just trying to survive. But at one Walmart in Portland, Oregon, a bizarre incident unfolded that still defies explanation. It began as what seemed like a simple theft, but by the end, it had left employees shaken, questioning whether they had stumbled into something far more sinister. And tonight, I'll tell you what really happened inside the Powell Boulevard Walmart. I was working as an assistant manager at the Walmart on Southeast Powell Boulevard, April 14th, 2020. It was just after 6 a.m., and the store was unusually quiet. We'd been through weeks of empty shelves and desperate customers, people lining up before sunrise, fighting over hand sanitizer and canned soup. But that morning, something felt different. When I walked into the paper goods aisle, my stomach dropped. The entire section, toilet paper, paper towels, tissues, was empty. Not picked over, not messy, empty. Every single package gone. At first, I thought it was panic buying again. But no, it wasn't. This was different. The shelves weren't torn apart the way desperate customers usually left them. No boxes ripped open, no loose rolls scattered on the floor. Instead, the shelves had been wiped clean, organized, precise. Even the price tags had been peeled off and stacked neatly. in a pile at the end of the aisle, like someone had prepared it. I rushed to the back office and pulled the overnight security tapes. What I saw made my blood run cold. At around 11 p.m. the night before, 4 people had entered through the employee entrance. They weren't customers. They weren't burglars. They were wearing Walmart uniforms, vests, name tags, even ID badges that beeped at the scanner when they swiped in. And they didn't sneak. They walked in with confidence, pushing carts and hand trucks. They knew exactly where to go. For the next 6 hours, they worked, moving methodically, clearing the shelves one by one, loading the goods onto pallets. Not once did they look around nervously. Not once did they run. It was like watching employees on a normal shift. But here's the thing. I recognized every one of my real night staff. And none of them were these people. These were strangers. And yet, they moved like they belonged. I told myself maybe it was a mistake. Maybe another Walmart had authorized a late-night transfer. Sometimes we share stock with nearby stores. But when I dug deeper, the paperwork didn't add up. The thieves hadn't just stolen the toilet paper. They'd used real inventory scanners, real authorization codes. They logged every item into the system as if it was being transferred to another location. And the records looked perfect. If I hadn't gone looking, I would have thought the products had just been reallocated. I sat there staring at the screen, my skin crawling. Whoever these people were, they knew Walmart's internal systems better than some of my own managers. When I checked the dock cameras, I saw the truck. It rolled up at 1 a.m. Not a beat-up rental, not some random U-Haul. It was a delivery truck, with branding, the same logo as one of our legitimate distributors. The fake employees loaded it carefully, stack after stack, row after row, not a single case out of place. And then, just before dawn, the truck pulled away. No alarms, no broken locks. Everything neat, clean, professional. By the time my morning crew arrived, the thieves were long gone. I called corporate. I called the police. Everyone thought it was an inside job. But here's the part no one could explain. The ID badges the thieves used were real, scanned by the system, logged in the database. But when we checked the names, they didn't exist. Not in our store, not in the company. It was as if Walmart had generated employee identities for people who were never hired. The uniforms? Legitimate. The scanners? Registered. Everything about them was real, except the people themselves. For weeks after, employees swore they saw them again. A glimpse of a familiar face in the break room mirror. A man in a Walmart vest, standing at the end of an aisle, but disappearing when you turned. One cashier told me she saw 2 of them unloading a truck in the dead of night, only for the truck to vanish when she called for backup. I told myself my team was just paranoid. Stress, exhaustion, too many night shifts. But I couldn't shake it, because every time I stayed late to close, I'd hear it. The sound of pallet jacks rolling across the backroom floor. But when I checked, there was nothing. A month later, corporate called me. They had tracked this stolen shipment, and according to the system, it had arrived, signed for, scanned, logged, at another Walmart in the city. But when investigators went to check, that store manager swore they had never received a single pallet. No truck had arrived. No cameras caught it. And yet, the paperwork was flawless. The products had been delivered, on paper, not in reality. To this day, no one knows who those 4 employees were. Police never identified them. Corporate never explained how their IDs and scanners were legitimate. And the strangest part? Every few months, we'd get another transfer notice. Always for the paper goods section. Always approved by someone higher up the chain. Someone whose name no one in the company recognized. That was story 3, the great toilet paper heist. And if you thought 4 strangers cleaning out a Walmart was terrifying, wait until you hear about what employees discovered in a small town. Walmart in Kentucky, where something far older and far darker was hiding inside the walls. Stay tuned. The 4th story takes us to Tulsa, Oklahoma. It happened in 2017. during a graveyard shift at a Walmart supercenter. Now, if you've never worked overnight retail, you might not realize how strange those hours can feel. The aisles are empty, the air feels heavy, and the silence is broken only by the occasional hum of fluorescent lights. But for two employees in Tulsa, one shift turned into something far stranger and far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. I was working in the electronics department that night. Overnight shifts were usually boring, a lot of zoning shelves, stocking, and answering the occasional oddball question from late-night customers. But around 2 a.m., the store was practically dead. That's when another associate, Josh, asked me to help him move some overstock into toys. I didn't mind. Anything to break up the monotony. We wheeled a flatbed cart through the empty aisles, talking about nothing in particular, football, gas prices, whatever. But as we turned the corner into the toy section, we both stopped dead in our tracks, because the aisle wasn't there. Now, I had worked that store for 2 years. I knew the layout like the back of my hand. The toy aisle had always been between housewares and seasonal. But that night, in its place, was just a blank stretch of wall. No shelves, no signage, just solid drywall, freshly painted. I remember staring at it in disbelief. Josh turned to me and whispered, This doesn't make sense. We thought maybe we'd gone down the wrong section. So we circled back, checked the end caps, looked for the signs. But no, the toy aisle was gone, completely erased. We were both freaked out, but we tried to rationalize it. Maybe overnight construction crews had closed it off. Maybe corporate had ordered a remodel and nobody told us. So we shrugged it off and went back to our departments. For the next half hour, everything seemed normal. Customers came through self-checkout. The intercom buzzed. We even joked about it, calling it the ghost aisle. But deep down, neither of us really believed it was just construction. And when Josh suggested we go back and double-check, I reluctantly agreed. That's when things got worse. Much worse. When we turned the corner again, the aisle was back. Fully stocked, brightly lit, like it had never disappeared. But something was wrong. The shelves were lined with toys I didn't recognize. Not brands we carried. Not anything I'd ever seen before. Boxes with faded lettering. Dolls with cracked porcelain faces. Board games with instructions in languages I didn't recognize. Josh picked up one of the dolls, turning it over in his hands. Its glass eyes seemed wet, like they were watching him. And then we heard it. A sound. Children laughing. But faint, like it was coming from the other end of the aisle. We froze. The aisle stretched long and endless. Way longer than it should have in the building's footprint. It felt like it just kept going, disappearing into shadow. And the laughter grew louder. Josh whispered, "We shouldn't be here." I agreed. We turned to leave, but when we looked back at the entrance, the way out was gone. Behind us was just more shelves. No end cap, no exit. Just aisle after aisle of toys, stretching forever. We started walking fast, then running, row after row, trying to find the way back. Finally, after what felt like hours, we burst out into the seasonal section, breathless, panicked, and clutching nothing but empty hands. The aisle had spat us out. We were back in the normal store. The toys were gone. Everything looked ordinary again. We looked at each other, half laughing, half crying, trying to convince ourselves we'd just had some kind of shared hallucination. We decided not to talk about it, not to anyone. But later that week, the store manager called us into the office. He said he'd been reviewing security footage, and he wanted to know why we had disappeared for 20 minutes during our shift. When we insisted we'd only been gone a few minutes, he showed us the tape. We watched in silence as the footage showed us entering the toy aisle. And then nothing. We never came out. The cameras kept running, but the aisle was empty for 20 long minutes. Then, suddenly, we both reappeared, stumbling out of seasonal like nothing had happened. The manager looked at us, pale. "Where the hell were you?" Neither of us had an answer. And to this day, I still don't. Some aisles in Walmart may feel endless. But in Tulsa, one aisle may have been something else entirely. A doorway To where? No one can say.